and the action's underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch!
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome along to another one of these APC races. And today, it's not 8:30, it's 7:30. That's UK time anyway. And why is that? Well, we have, as you can see on your screens, not just the main race this evening around the Austrian Grand Prix. We also have we've got a race on our hands, a sprint race on our hands before we head to the racing action itself. And I'm just going to try and get on the screen exactly what is going on today. So we've got the, a reverse grid on, but I believe it's a reverse championship grid on our hands. And, alongside me to explain all things APC, it's Owen Boldero.
Hello everyone, and I'm really excited for our first APC sprint of the season, of course, one of two. And Austria is a fantastic circuit to have a sprint because it produces close racing, you know, two DRS zones. No, it is three, yes, I was right. 3 DRS zones, all with very, very good overtaking opportunities at the end, you know. Probably the most favourable one is heading into turn 4 at the end of that third DRS straight. And it produces some fantastic racing, so I'm excited.
It certainly does, and we experiment with Austria in APC. Last year it was the 100% race to celebrate the 100th race of the Almost Pro Championship, and this time around, well, we have a sprint race and we have a Grand Prix on our hands. The sprint race is about to get underway, and we're going to have 12 laps of action, then we're going to have a break before we head to the main race itself. And of course, we'll have qualifying for that one as well. This one being a shorter race, we will not have a grid set by qualifying. Instead, it will be the reverse championship order, which should shake things up, as you'll see drivers who are potentially quicker a little bit further towards the back of the field, and a few drivers that are slow, potentially taking podiums away. And it's Jack Weaver on that reverse pole position, which is actually 10th place. So it's all going to be decided over the next few laps, and some drivers going for mediums, some drivers going for hards. So it's all to play for here in Austria, and we are just about ready to get underway, just waiting for that green flag, and then we are going to get the chances to take the victory here today. And just to give you a little piece of information, we've got Luca Seracini at the back of the field because he joined late. So he is at the back of the field, and he'll be starting from there and hoping to fight his way through as well. And we are getting going to the formation lap here in Austria, and it's going to be Mr. Taddo Jennings to lead us off the line. Carl Stewart Woodard alongside him. Brian Moore third place on the grid alongside Connor. Those two have had fights spanning seasons, and Kyle involved in that one this time. Stuart Towers and Dan Riley on the third row of the grid, and Stephen Snell and Andrea Chenkovan, probably the two fastest in the championship, on the fourth row of the grid. And then Luca Seracini and Jack Weaver, I assume they were late, so they're going to be starting from the very back.
Yeah, both of them were late. They were questioning in the chat why they were at the back, so I had to explain to them, you know, if it's in the rules, if you arrive late after 7:25, you get put to the back just because, you know, we need to set the grid, because it's a reverse championship order. It's not like just kind of, oh, everyone's in, ready up sort of thing. There's an extra procedure that we have to go through to set the grid. So, you know, it's just sort of a countermeasure, I suppose, to encourage people who are turning up to the sprint to not turn up at like 7:29, for instance, and make us late.
Not doing me, essentially, I assume is the idea, because
True, yes.
Well, I mean, my timekeeping isn't necessarily the greatest. I mean,
nor is mine, to be fair.
Oh yeah, that's valid. You were in the lobby before me today, I think, as were the majority of the drivers. But yeah, I mean, listen, you can't be talented and perfect at everything, can you? And we are Well, one thing that we're very good at is commentary, and one thing that these drivers are very good at is driving, and we're going to have 36 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix later to decide the victor in the main race and to see where this championship swings. Of course, Steven Snell not available the last couple of races, but he is back today and ready to take to the Austrian Grand Prix. But before those 36 laps, we have just the 12, a straight shootout to the victory. Give me two words in case you want to full name somebody. Who's going to take the victory?
Or I'm gonna go with Andrea Chenkovan, but I think it will literally be by a couple attempts from Steven Snell.
Well, that was 21 words, not 2. But that's fine, because, that's adding to our list of things that we can't
Who's
do.
counting,
Now,
eh?
Well,
Who's counting?
Me, I was desperately trying to do it on my fingers. And, we're going to do a little bit more counting right here, right now, with Austria. And with the 5 lights in front of the drivers. And the action's underway. Harry Jennings gets off to a slow start, and it's going to be Kyle Stewart-Woodard who pulls alongside and ahead into the first corner. So Brian Moore takes 3rd place, and it's going to be Connor Stewart-Woodard who's bogged down, and Stuart Towers is going to try and go around the outside. They head up the hill then, side by side for 2nd place, side by side for now 5th, as Dan Riley gets through on Connor. It's a terrible start for the McLaren, who goes from 3rd place. He makes a huge send down the inside, and dare I say it, that was a rash last-minute decision, and it hasn't worked out for him. He drops to the back of the field. Stuart Towers is up to 3rd place. Dan Riley is almost about to take the podium position off him, and will make a late lunge into the 4th corner on this circuit. It's going to be contact. Stuart Towers almost sent off the circuit by Dan Riley, but the Mercedes gets through in the end of it, and Towers drops down to 4th place, but Kyle already breaking DRS to Brian in 2nd place, and that's a great start.
Yeah, an absolutely fantastic start for Kyle and Brian. And Dan Riley is absolutely flying so far. You know, if he can get through Jedi very, very quickly, Brian Moore, then he'll be able to catch Kyle relatively quickly. As we've seen throughout the season, he has ordinarily been quicker. But one man who will not be happy is Connor Stewart-Woodard, who has had an absolutely terrible start by his standards. You know, we usually see him move up maybe a position or so. But as Stephen gets a 3-second track limit penalty already, only a lap in, so that's interesting. But Connor also has that 10-second penalty, unfortunately.
Yeah, all these drivers, I think, are going to have maybe more penalties than we'd be used to because of how hard they're pushing, and how Austria is one of those circuits where you can get those penalties. Stuart Towers is past Steven Snell, and Andrea Chenkovan is going to pull alongside as there's another 10-second penalty for Connor as he tries to keep up with the back of the field. I think he might have just straight line turn 3 again as Steven Snell loses the position to Andrea Chenkovan. Now, these 3 drivers, in terms of Chenkovan, Snell, and Dan Riley, are all on sets of hard compound tyres. Everybody else is on the medium, so they're not going to be so quick so far. But towards the end of the race, they're going to be absolutely flying. And Steven Snell already trying to fly. And Andrea Chenkovan already flying. Both of them up from 7th and 8th on the grid to 5th and 6th. And it is Andrea Chenkovan who came from that 8th place all the way up to 5th. So he's jumped 3 drivers. But heading on to lap number 3 of this race already. How time flies, and Jack Weaver gets the next penalty as Brian Moore drops a position. Stuart Towers is up onto the podium. And Chenkovan up to P4. Dan Riley with the fastest lap of the race as Steven Snell gets the run out of the first corner, and he gets past Brian Moore. He might make 2 positions in the space of just 3 corners as we've got to switch for the lead of the race. Dan is through on Kyle, and it's going to be Steven Snell around the outside of Chenkovan. Can he pull this one off, or can Chenkovan fight back? The Ferrari is going to fight back, and he is going to take this all the way down to turn number 4 and maybe even get the run on Stuart Towers. This would be an unbelievable move if he's able to pull it off, and it's late braking. Towers squeezes him, but that is Chenkovan through and up onto the podium, but it's Dan Riley in the lead of the race.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. You know, it was some great racing between Andrea Chenkovan and Steven Snell. It just looked like at turn 3, Andrea Chenkovan managed to get the better traction out of the corner, probably because he had that inside line on the outside. It's a little bit more difficult to get your foot down because you have that awkward curb on the exit, so he was able to get the better traction and then get through. And with DRS, something that Stuart Towers was deprived of, he was able to get past into 3rd position and now is barely just out of DRS range on Kyle.
Yeah, it's done so well, Dan Riley, to take that lead, and Andrea Chenkovan is done so well to close in, even though those hard compound tyres are significantly slower at this point in the race. But as they close in, they are going to get better and better and better, and they're going to get quicker. And I think we might have a top 3 all of hard compound tyre runners. Steven Snell through on Stuart Towers now, and he's chasing down Chenkovan once again, trying to hold on to that DRS, and Chenkovan trying to hold on to the coattails of the McLaren up ahead of him, as Carl Stewart Woodard is only 3/10 ahead of him now, and already 2 seconds behind Dan Riley. So the win could have snuck away already from the Ferrari or the leader's Mercedes teammate. But at the moment, they are just waiting and trying to sight their way through the field. They have the pace, as Dan Riley started a little bit further up the field, so he won't have had to gain that momentum up. In fact, he and Chenkovan are the biggest gainers, 5 positions, and Chenkovan will get 6 if he's able to get through on Stuart Woodard on this straight. Stuart Woodard poor exit out of the final corner, and he allows Chenkovan to take the racing line, but he cuts across before Steven Snell can have a sniff, and it's Chenkovan up to second place, and Stuart Woodard with a penalty, and that's a lot of penalties coming in that first corner. Lucas Ericini and Brian Moore getting them too, as Steven Snell pulls alongside Kyle, and he's up into that podium position. Kyle trying to brake late, but there's not much that he can do to fight back against the Mercedes. So it's now Mercedes 1-3, and it's a hard compound tyre runner 1-2-3.
Yeah, and I think now Andrea Chenkovan and Steven Snell need to play this one a little bit smart. You know, they've got 2 drivers. I wonder if Kyle can stay with them as well, but they've got 2 drivers. They've got the 2 of them. If they can DRS pull each other along, they can get closer to the back of Dan Riley. This is especially useful for Andrea Chenkovan because he obviously doesn't have that penalty, whereas Steven Snell doesn't, as Steven is actually dropping back ever so slightly. So can Andrea Chenkovan begin to catch it? It looks like he is by about 2.5 to 3/10 at this lap alone.
Andrea Chenkovan absolutely flying, and Steven Snell just trying to keep up as the fights are going on further down the field as well. We've seen Brian Moore get swarmed at the start of this race. We've seen Harry Jennings as well have problems, and he's currently fighting with Connor, I think, for pride, but also trying to fight for these lower points positions as there's contact between the two. Jennings sent into the wall, and that's going to be the end of the Williams' competitive sprint race. Looking at, though, the drivers for that 6th place, and Lucas Aracini getting through on Jack Weaver. The 2 latecomers are just fighting away, as that's another 3-second time penalty for Brian Moore, and that is going to be Lucas Aracini through on Jack Weaver. Weaver trying to fight back with the DRS, but there's only so much you can do, and if you get a poor exit out of turn 3, that is going to cost you that fight. But a late braking moment into turn 4 almost gets him onto the back of Saraceni, but it's a move that he's going to have to set up. As look at this pace from Chenkovan and Stevens. Now, you said they were going to trade DRS. They don't need to do that because they've gained an entire second on Dan Riley, who's going to be shaking in his Mercedes boots.
Yeah, definitely. He has one piece of security here, and that comes in the form of Steven has 6 seconds of track limit penalties. So, you know, as long as he doesn't do anything stupid, at least second place here is guaranteed, as there's a 3.3 gap back to Stuart Towers behind Steven. So as long as he plays it smart here, second place is probably guaranteed.
Yeah, at least. But, well, I mean, he does have to play his cards right, and Chenkovan closing right in. But Dan Riley getting a strong exit out of turn number 3, and he pulls 4/10 on Andrea Chenkovan, and that's going to be the benefit that he has, because some of these drivers are running different assists, and Dan Riley, no ABS, or with ABS, in fact, is going to break away in corners like that, where Chenkovan might not, as Jack Weaver, Lucas Aracini, side by side, late send from Weaver, and, well, he actually backs out of it and tries to go for the switchback, but he can't quite do so. These are huge sends into those turn number 4. We've seen some incredible moves into turn 4 so far this race, and we've seen pretty much every overtake coming there, but it hasn't quite worked for Jack Weaver. He's going to have to set it up once again into that corner, I would imagine, as Dan Riley is still in the lead of this race onto lap 8 of 12. We are 2/3 of the way through this one, and the Mercedes still leads the way, but Chenkovan could see himself through on this lap or on the next. He's gone through one of the DRS zones on the straight to set himself up. The second DRS zone is where he blasts through, and the Ferrari takes a very deserved race victory. Started in 8th place, don't forget, and he's already on lap 8 up to the lead of this one, and Steven Snell hasn't quite been able to keep pace with Chenkovan, but what he has done is keep pace with Dan Riley, and so we might see Mercedes fighting soon.
Yeah, as also something to keep an eye on is the position difference. So Dan Riley has been in no man's land until just now, when he has just been overtaken. So I imagine he probably has had the ability to either save his tyres or save his ERS. And as I'm looking, actually, yes, he's got a lot more ERS than both Andrea Chenkovan and Steven Snell. So that is the advantage he has currently. If he can just stay with Andrea Chenkovan in that middle sector, in the first and final sector where there's DRS, he's going to be absolutely flying purely through that DRS bonus.
Yes, it's there's 3 straights on the DRS. Well, there's 3 straights on this circuit where you can pick up the DRS, and they've just gone through the first one, the main straight. Steven Snell, though, not quite close enough to Dan Riley, and that penalty that he picked up early in the race might cost him this second place. But now they continue this chase through. The top 3 are staying within range, and Dan Riley doing well to stay within range of Andrea Chenkovan. And this is the DRS effect, because Chenkovan was so much faster when he was pushing. Now that he's stopped pushing, and now that Dan Riley's got that DRS, the Mercedes is able to keep range with the Ferrari, and at the moment just trying to hold through at the moment. And these 3, it's continuing to fight. Jack Weaver and Luca Seracini coming together. And I think Jack Weaver tried to take the outside line, came across, thought that he'd got the move done on Luca, but he hadn't. And that allows the opportunity for Brian Moore in the meantime to make his way up to 6th place. And Luca Seracini is going to take 7th with Jack Weaver still in 8th place, but it's getting a bit fiery for that 7th.
Yeah, definitely. I actually didn't see the incident. I literally cut on board as they were flying into the gravel trap. So things getting a little bit dicey, as you said. But can these 2 now forget about their differences and start to catch up to Brian? Because as actually Jack Weaver's going to come into the pits. What on earth's going on there?
He might have damage. I'm not 100% sure. We're watching on board with the kick Sauber now. As
he could have rear wing damage. It did look like he might have some rear wing damage when I was on board with him. I'm not 100% sure if we have it on, but potentially, or his tyres are just that dead. Tyre wear around Austria is absolutely appalling. It's so high for absolutely no reason. So it could just be his tyres just aren't going to go to the end.
Yeah, it might well be. And we might see this case for a few of the drivers in the rest of this race, and throughout the rest of this race, in fact, with just a couple of laps to go, that they start to reach puncture region. And this is why Chenkovan, Riley and Steven Snell all went for that gamble onto a set of the hards, just because they can guaranteed make it to the end. And actually, the way that they've driven so far, those mediums look very, very, very good. And, they are just blasting away from the rest of the field. Stuart Towers 9.3 even behind, and Kyle Stewart Woodard is in 5th place. Is he going to be able to close in on Towers? He's going to have that DRS, in fact, as they head out of turn number 1 and towards turn number 2. And up the hill to turns 3 and 4 with that DRS in mind. And the McLaren staying behind for the time being, I think, is the verdict. And I think he's going to try and go for that move on the last lap of the race, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, Dan Riley just struggling a little bit to stay in DRS on Andrea Chenkovan right now. 1.2 seconds now, the gap. So Dan Riley, maybe his tyres struggling a little bit. He looked relatively stable, but that's not necessarily an indicator. Or it is just Andrea Chenkovan currently is absolutely flying, which, as I'm on board with him, he's absolutely pushing the track limits.
Yeah, he is absolutely flying, and he has actually broken that DRS on Dan Riley as we head on to the last lap of this race now. Steven Snell in 3rd place, but he's got that penalty, so I don't think, even if he does get past Dan Riley on the circuit, he is going to be holding on to that 2nd place, unless there's a mistake made by Dan Riley anymore. And, it's going to be... I think it's going to be cut and dry that Dan Riley, who had an insane start to this race, is going to be coming home in that 2nd, and Andrea Chenkovan in that 1st place. Incredible pace from the Ferrari. Just demonstrated exactly why he was put so far back on the grid, and he's fought his way through the grid like it's absolutely nothing. Chased down Dan Riley like it was nothing. Cut into his lead by 9/10 of a second in 1 lap. As Luca Seracini gets through on Brian Moore, as Brian Moore fights back and does actually retake the position, but that fight will surely continue on, as we're going to have a look. We don't want to cut back, but we're going to have to cut back. We'll switch back to that battle in a minute, but Andrea Chenkovan is going to win this sprint race and start off his evening on a high. Dan Riley in 2nd, and Steven Snell in a very clear 3rd place. after the penalties are applied. Stuart Towers is going to come home in 4th place in the end. Carl Stuart Woodard's penalty, meaning that he's actually decided that he doesn't want to take it any closer to Towers. And then we're going to watch on now with Saraceni and Moore. Is in the lead of this one. How many penalties do they have applied? This could be crucial. They've both got 6 seconds, so this is going to come down to a run to the line. And it's actually going to come down to a penalty around the final corner for Luca Saraceni as they almost pulled alongside, but it's going to be Brian Moore who takes 6th place. 7th then is going to go the way of Jack Weaver. Not sure what happened between him and Saraceni, but tensions certainly flared and he comes home in 8th place. Connor Stuart Woodard, after all the problems that he's had, will be 9th, but Harry Jennings, I think, is going to overtake him after the penalties are applied. And yeah, there we go. It's Stuart Woodard with a 10-second unserved penalty. And Mr. Dado, Harry Jennings, will come home for that 9th place with Connor, the final finisher. But a flurry of action there to kick off our evening.
Yeah, I was on board actually with Luca Saraceni for his penalty, and literally just heading into the final corner, just went straight over that curb, got as close to the wall as he physically could, and it just cost him that 6th place, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is a shame, but Andrew Chenkovan takes the victory in the first race of 2 in this evening. Don't forget to subscribe and stick around for this one and for this main race. If it's anything like the sprint race, then it's going to be sensational. And, well, we've done 12 laps. We've got 48 to go, plus what we're going to get in the race. So make sure to stick around, and we will see you in just half an hour's time. Well then, ladies and gents, welcome along. We had our sprint race it was about half an hour ago when we finished up, and we're now here for the main thing. My name is Joseph Black, and alongside me will be Owen Boldero. But not quite yet, so you get the pleasurable company of me in my full podcast self. We have 12 drivers taking to the circuit this evening. We had 10 before, but currently we have 12. And I think we should... Are we going to have 13? We might have 13. I'm going to have a check just to see... No, we should have 12. Just because the debate was about Luca Saraceni and about Jack Weaver, because attendance is not mandatory to the sprint race, but it is preferred that you do turn up for your own purposes, really, simply because then you get the opportunity to, or you get the chance to just, pick up some points for yourself, if more than anything. So I don't personally see why you wouldn't do it. Unless, there's other reasons why you haven't rocked up, which is fair enough, and, real life does get in the way, but at some point, if you're fighting for a championship, suddenly real life doesn't get in the way, surprisingly enough. And yeah, we should be in for a very, very good race here around Austria once again. And yeah, we will have a very good time. We'll have our 12 drivers in the session, and the 12 drivers are in the session. Now we're down trackside. And, the trackside audio didn't work last time. It appears to be working once again. So, not sure why that was, but thankfully, we will have cars roaring around the Austrian Grand Prix circuit in just a couple of minutes' time, whenever the drivers are out on said circuit. But yeah, we do have our first driver out on circuit, and it is going to be Dan Riley, of course. Well, the driver below Dan Riley in the standings. As it stands, of course, it's not going to be any sort of official standings, because this is just how they've stacked up. I don't really know what order they stack up in. Potentially the order they joined the session. I mean, Lucas Ericini's last, so he's late, so that would track. But, I mean, Kyle's like 10th, so I don't know. I'm not sure what that's all about, but yeah, we have trackside. We have trackside, we have pictures, and hopefully we have audio as well. And, well, we have a very, very good opportunity for some of these drivers to show what they can do, even if they had a bad sprint race. And this is one of those men who, you know, we'd be the first ones to look to, talking about having a bad sprint race. And the second one is currently in the pit lane because he was fighting away with the Williams of Harry Jennings pretty much the entire race long. And, well, it's not necessarily the best. But it is what it is. 16 minutes left to go in the session. We've got our first driver out on the circuit and out on their push lap. It's going to be Dan Riley. And when I talk about not best, it's because they just haven't had the greatest session. You know, they didn't have the greatest race. Connor decided to take an interesting braking point into turn number 3, which cost him. But yeah, I mean, at this point in the race, or at this point in the weekend, it's just all about surviving. Maybe you don't think that you've got the best opportunity to take the race victory or something like that, but if you can pick up as many points as you can, then it's always a good thing. For you personally, Dan Riley, first couple of sectors are complete, and the third sector is underway and almost complete. That is the nature of this Austrian Grand Prix circuit. And around that final corner, then for the Mercedes, what lap time is it going to be for Daniel Riley? It's going to be a 1 minute 4.439. That's the benchmark that all the other drivers are going to try and compete with. And the man who set the benchmark in the sprint race was Andrew Chenkvan, who comes around the final corner, keeps that lap valid. Is he going to be setting the benchmark in this qualifying? Of course he is. A 104.139. Is anybody able to anywhere near match him? As we'll have a look. Carl Stewart Woodard, final couple of corners, as that is going to be a V-carb in the pit lane. Burt not happy with his lap, and well, it looks like Brian Moore or Jack Weaver, whichever one that is. I think it might have been Jack Weaver, gave some good slipstream to Kyle, who brought himself up to third place with a 1:05.1, and it was actually not Kyle. It wasn't Jack Weaver. It was, in fact, Brian Moore who gave him that slipstream, and this is Jack Weaver, who had an incident in the second sector of the lap, and so did not complete a lap time that could be deemed as good or valid. And he's going down the straight again. What? Okay, well, he's got a time on the board, I guess. It's a 1:15.0, but he has got a time on the board. Interesting. Anyway, Brian Moore, final sector, is almost about to be breached. He's got a 46.4 in the first 2 sectors. And we'll see where Brian ends up qualifying in the first runs. And we can see how, but his teammate is 10 seconds off of Carl Stewart, or actually exactly 9.9 seconds off of Carl Stewart. And Brian around the final corner. I think this is going to breach the gap between the two. Indeed, it is a 1:06.612, the lap time. That set, but Andrew Chenkvan setting the early pace, and he's done so in the Drivers' Championship as well. 79 points after the first 5 rounds, and the sprint race as well, which has added to his total and eked out that gap ahead of Ethan Shackleton, who is not here this evening. Stephen Snell in 3rd place, and Daniel Riley in 4th in the standings, but there's a decently large gap in between Stephen Snell and Dan Riley of 20 points, which is very unfortunate for Dan Riley, and it's a gap that he's going to be wanting to bridge. He has gained positions over Benjamin D, who of course is not in the league anymore, but well, is transitioning to being a full-time driver, and he is currently holding that 10th place in the standings, and currently holding the 10th place in the standings on the track at least. The man in 14th and last position, 2 points, and it is Mr. Tello, Harry Jennings, and he's going to see what he can do in his final sector. Is that a hint of rain I can see on the Austrian circuit? I think very potentially there is rain threatening up in the hills of Styria, and the final couple of corners for Harry Jennings, and these laps are more important than you could imagine, as that's Stephen Snell up to 4th place, and that's Paul Garung in 3rd. And that's going to be Harry Jennings up to 7th place. But yeah, that is how we stack up. Very, very potentially, we are going to be having a wet end to our qualifying session. And drivers who haven't set lap times so far are going to be hoping that it stays off. Bert Welly, Stuart Towers on their out laps. And Lucas Seracini and Connor Stewart-Woodard are on their push laps. And Jack Weaver is not out on the circuit just yet. But this is an opportunity to have a look at the Ferrari blasting away ahead of the rest of the field as far as this is concerned, and Mercedes the only team able to relatively keep touch with them. We've known that was going to be the case since the start of the season. Ferrari are now 23 points ahead of the Mercedes team. Kick Sauber, well, they are 76 points behind if my math serves me correctly, so that's a huge gap in between them, and there's only 1 point between themselves and Racing Bulls, only 4 points between 3rd and 6th place. So it's a very, very good fight that we could have on our hands, especially with Racing Bulls' new driver, Bert Welly, who's already picked up 18 points on the board. It wasn't for the Willie or for the Racing Bulls. I don't remember exactly who it was. A reserve, though, as that is Stuart Towers having a little bit of a problem in the final sector. And his lap will not be counted as anything anywhere near decent as Bert Welly around the first corner to start his first lap time in this session. And well, the V-carb at the moment is going to see what he can do. There is definitely rain threatening and potentially rain already coming down on the circuit. Purple allegedly in the first sector for Bert Welly, and we'll see whether he is able to hook it up throughout the rest of the lap and get a time on the board, which is seeming ever so crucial at this point, especially. And well, some drivers have a little bit shaky lap times on the board, Jack Weaver being one of them. He is in that second sector now and ready to go at pushing again. I believe we now have the pleasurable company of Owen Boldero.
Hello, yes, I am here. Hello, hello.
Hello, wonderful. Right, you're in the lobby, right? You can see what's going on with 9 minutes.
Yes, I am in, yes. Yes, I am in. What have I missed so far, then?
Well, there's rain threatening, but the main things you've missed really in terms of this qualifying session, not necessarily a surprise, but just, you know, lap times being set, and Jack Weaver for some reason deciding to continue on a 1:15 lap time. So I don't know why he did that. He's going to improve on it now, though, up to the line. He was 2/10 up in the first two sectors. He's gained another 10 seconds, and he moves up to 6th place. Field split by 2.5. That's not a bad gap considering we've got 11, and Stuart Towers retiring, demonstrating maybe we do have rain on the horizon. He's not going to set a lap time. He's going to start from the back.
Why does Jack Weaver's car literally have no front wing?
You may be getting the visual glitch. Yeah, you're definitely getting the...
Yes.
You mean like when the whole thing is sliced off?
Yeah, it's just completely gone.
Yeah, I don't have that, so...
Oh, right, okay, so it's just a visual glitch then.
Yes. It's a weird...
EA, ladies and gentlemen.
I've never seen it before, but I've had it multiple times this year. Chen-Fan, by the way, in the final sector, improving by 8, or down even by 0.8 of a second. But allegedly still purple, so maybe he messed up in that first sector somewhere. So around the final couple of corners, he comes to try and improve on his 104.1. Nope, he's into the pit lane. Back. Unsafe pit going?
No, there's no one around him. It's not going to be the end of the world. But just that, like, he carried too much speed into that penultimate corner, and then his car just refused to cooperate with him, is what it looked like from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting at that point, and well, that is going to be something that is key as these lap times get more and more important as we head through the session. Dan Riley is improving by 0.75 of a tenth, and well, he's only 0.02 of a second ahead of Paul Garang at the moment. If he can find 0.3, then he can be in with a shout of catching Andrea Chen-Fan. I've been really impressed with Dan Riley so far this season, and 104.295 brings him to within 1.5 or just above 1.5 behind Andrea Chen-Fan. He continues to impress me more and more every time he performs, and I'd say so far he'd be my driver of the season, just the way that he's improved from last season.
Yeah, he's definitely had quite a few decent races. It does feel like now he's more consistently challenging the top group than he was in the first season he was here. There were races back on F1 24 where he was there or thereabouts. Of course, Abu Dhabi sticks out to mind, and then of course Bahrain and circuits like that. There's sort of been 3-4 times so far this season where he's just been there or thereabouts, and you feel like he could be a contender for a podium or potentially even more.
Which is really good considering that Dan Riley was fighting with Carl Stewart Woodard. He's clearly gotten to grips with the game a little bit quicker in this session and in this season as a whole, I think, and he's done very well so far. And well, he's second place at the moment. He's on the front row of the field, and well, Stephen Snell not quite catching up as Carl Stewart Woodard. He was up by. Well, he improved on his second run. He got a 104.807, which takes him to 600ths more or less ahead of Lucas Aracini. But yeah, not too bad so far from some of these drivers. And well, there's less than a second splitting the top 8, almost a second, just over a second splitting the top 9. So pretty successful qualifying session so far. And well, Kyle on his in-lap. Stephen Snell is going to go once again. He invalidated on his last lap time. He's going to try and push once again. And we will see as Andrew Chenkvan was just receiving information. Andrew Chenkvan does not have the fastest in all the sectors. It's actually Paul Garung who was quickest in the first sector by 0.02 of a second. And Dan Riley has dominance over that second sector, showing exactly why running ABS can be useful, especially in turn 3, as he is 0.03 of a second up on Andrew Chenkvan as the best lap time in that second sector. Third sector then is Chenkvan by 0.2, or 0.1 to Lucas Aracini, but 0.2 to anyone anywhere near him. And that's a good lap time so far. That is a very good lap time so far, considering that he hasn't had the greatest one and Stephen Snell off the circuit. He won't be improving in the Mercedes, and that is unfortunate, but a 104.5 is alright. I think the rain might stay away. We've got just under 5 minutes left in the session.
Yeah, and I think Andrea Chenkvan, considering his lap was only a first lap, it doesn't seem like he can go quicker on it at the moment. A 104.1 is a very fast banker lap around here, you know. If you're doing sort of a 102.4, 5-ish as your banker, then you're in the right area to potentially be in sort of the 103s, if you can find that time. But Austria sometimes can be a little bit difficult to hook a lap up around. It's quite a difficult circuit due to the nature of track limits, but it seems like some of our drivers aren't having too many issues with it. Hopefully we get plenty of improvements towards the end of this session.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will. Although we have a pretty high bar set already. Bert is on his push laps and he is, well, he's 400ths down in the first sector, so there's time to find on his lap. And, well, there certainly is, with him having just above a 1:04, which looks like the benchmark time for now, 104.65 or 9:57 even being the slowest lap time in the 104s, and he's in 7th place, so he's just outside the top half. But then what can he do in the second sector? It's not an improvement. Is he going to be pushing once again on a lap? It looks like he might be conserving, and it looks like he might be taking the opportunity to go once again. 3 minutes left in the session. It would actually make sense at this point to come into the pits to prepare yourself for the final run, because he might run out of time, and he's probably watching the stream and listening to me, and in he comes into the pits. The final run's ready to begin then, and the drivers getting their final preparations to see if they can beat Andrea Chenkvan's 1:04.139.
Yeah, and towards the end of this qualifying session, it's going to be interesting to see when drivers choose to go out. You know, it's a little bit of a weird circuit when it comes to qualifying Austria. Due to it being a much shorter circuit, sometimes it can be advantageous to go a little bit earlier than your conscience is telling you to, because you can sometimes get the benefit of having no traffic around you, as Stephen clearly agrees with me on, as he is first out onto the track very early. And sometimes just having that lack of traffic can write whether your lap is a good one or a bad one.
Yeah, it could make all the difference. And Stephen Snell, the first driver out on the circuit. And, well, I think the rain has managed to stay away at this point, but these tyres are looking a little bit slicker, so I think we might be getting rain at the end. So I don't hate Stephen Snell coming out so early and getting his lap in. The only problem he's going to suffer from is traffic, I think. And, well, there's 2 drivers in the first sector, both of the kick Saubers. I believe that will be Brian getting out of the way. Oh, it's not actually. It's Jack Weaver getting out of the way for Brian, so I've misread that one, but... yeah, Stephen Snell is about to start his next push lap. You've got Connor Stewart-Woodard and Dan Riley, the next drivers to filter out. And Stephen Snell might be held up by one of those. He might also be held up by the two V-carbs that are coming out of the pits at the moment, although I think he's going to manage to avoid the Ferrari and the McLaren. Into the first corner then, Stephen Snell. You're going to want to cut this as much as you can while still keeping it legal, and Stephen Snell has done that perfectly, avoiding one of the V-carbs and might actually get the slipstream of the second V-carb down to the next straight, but no, they pull off and out of the way. Then you want to break it around the 75-metre mark and get your turn in, and Stephen Snell, allegedly purple in that first sector. We'll see what he's able to do. Everybody is now out on the circuit apart from the two. Williams, Stuart Towers has obviously decided that he's not going to be able to get a lap time in this session, and Harry Jennings, his lap time is not quite up to scratch, but he's not going to come out of the pits again, I don't think. Now, using as much of the curb to turn in as you can, and Stephen Snell missing that braking point just a little bit, missing the apex of the corner, and he's down on his lap time, 7 thousandths of a second down though. And so this is pretty much a blank canvas for him to try and gain 4 tenths in this final sector. It's going to be difficult, especially with such a short lap and such a short sector. The Mercedes now around the final corner and putting the power down. Is this going to be a good lap time? Is this going to be anywhere near pole? No, it's not. It is going to be an improvement. It's only enough of P4.
Yeah, he just lost a little bit in that middle sector, it felt like, compared to what he had in that first sector in terms of improvement. As we head on board with Dan Riley, who was only 200 of a second down in the first sector, so heading into the middle sector where realistically the most time is to be found. Can he find any more improvements?
Well, we'll see what they can do. Dan Riley, second sector, and he's going to improve by a tenth. So there is time in this lap for Dan Riley, and there is potential for pole as Lucas Aracini retires. I'm not sure how he's managed to retire on the circuit, but he's going to pull off to the side on the exit of turn number 2. Dan Riley then final corner as the checkered flag is waved. Is this going to be the first pole position for the Mercedes? It's going to be a 104.211. It's a heartbreak as he's not quite gone quick enough. Andrea Chenkovan looks like he might be getting this pole position improving by just a little bit in the first sector. And in the second sector, well, 2 tenths of a second. That is the quality and the class that the Ferrari provides. And he is going to be going on, I think, to take this pole position away with a 1:03 lap time, which would be incredible stuff as everybody up to the line now. Carl Stewart-Woodard with his final lap is going to leapfrog Jack Weaver and Chenkovan. 1 minute. Oh, he's lost time in the final sector. 1 minute 4.111. So he is going to be ahead of Dan Riley by exactly 1/10 of a second. Paul Garung was improving significantly, being validated, and that is going to be that for the Aston Martin. And the final driver to set a lap time in this session as Stephen Snell peels off into the pits is going to be Brian Moore. And where is the Kick Sauber able to go? The mystery machine, if you watch particular broadcasts. But nope, and well, that's a way to end a qualifying session. Brian Moore is going to be Andrew Chenkovan on pole position. Exactly a tenth ahead of Dan Riley. Third place for Paul Garung. Fourth for Stephen Snell. And fifth for Burt Welly. Carl Stewart-Woodard is in sixth place with Jack Weaver in seventh. Lucas Aracini in eighth. Connor Stewart-Woodard even in ninth. And Brian Moore in 10th with the two Williams, Harry Jennings and Stuart Tower. Not necessarily getting competitive lap times on the board, but that's going to be the end of the qualifying session. And, well, that was an interesting way to bring it to an end by Brian Moore.
Yeah, I've seen people do it before. I've done it before. It just saves a few seconds, I suppose, compared to crossing the line. So, and it's also a bit more of a comedic way to go out, going out with a bang, as they say.
Yeah, he certainly didn't go out with a bang with the lap time. So going out with a bang with a crash is certainly a way to get yourself on the broadcast. Austria, our race around the Styrian circuit is about to get underway, and the drivers are getting their final preparations underway, and we can take you trackside once again. And we're into the pit lane, and we are ready to go racing, and we've got 12 drivers this time. How is the dynamic going to change between a sprint race and a real race?
Well, in terms of dynamic, it's a completely different ballgame, because now that you're in a 36-lap race, you've got a lot more time compared to what you do in a sprint. In a sprint, there's a level of desperation, I suppose is the best way to put it. Whereas when you've got 36 laps, you can afford to spend a few laps recharging your battery behind someone maybe a little bit slower than you. You can save tires for a few laps because you've got so many laps to do to do good stuff, improve your position, you've got the time to do that. So I think the memo around Austria is DRS makes this circuit frustrating to overtake on. It looks like it's easy to overtake on, but if you get stuck in a train, it definitely is not easy. So my advice to the drivers out there would be take your time with it.
Yes, it's, slow and steady wins the race, especially around the shortest lap on the calendar, which is a weird sort of paradox that we've got. And the Austrian circuit is going to be an archetype of that. Just having the overview of said circuit: 2.683 miles and 4,318 kilometers, 10 turns around the circuit. Although some would claim 9 because turn number 2 is on a kink up to turn number 3, and that is basically the entire corner that you have. Well, the rest of the lap, pretty defined corners, most of which mid-speed, but that second sector is so challenging just to keep that minimum speed up, but it's so crucial.
Yeah, definitely. Minimum speed at Austria can be something that defines your pole position and finishing sixth in a qualifying session, especially in the race as well. It can be race defining. Minimum speed is so important here due to A, how many straights there are, and B, some of the corners are very, very high speed, especially in that final sector.
They very, very, very much are. Very high speed. And, I think the minimum you want to go into any corners, apart from the hairpin, is probably 4th gear. I think that's the absolute minimum, the minimum gear you want to go into. Maybe you go into 3rd into the first corner. Maybe you go into 3rd into turn 4. But 4th gear is generally a good gear to go around this circuit. And the formation lap is about to get underway. Andrea Chenkovan sets off keen as ever. And we'll see whether the Ferrari driver, who is without his teammate, is able to convert this to a win. A slight split in strategies here in comparison to the sprint race. The 3 drivers that were on the hard compound tyres. Well, 2 of them have switched over to the mediums, and they're going to do a medium hard. But the other one, Daniel Riley, is going to do a hard medium. Paul Garung and Bert Welly are both on the mediums, and everybody else on a set of the hards. So everyone going long, and they're all going for the overcut pretty much.
I actually think what it is, when you're not at an esports level, which of course we're not, this is the Almost Pro Championship, this is a nailed-on 2-stop, this race. I've commentated a few league races at Austria now. This is a nailed-on 2-stop. It is not possible. If you're not an esports driver and you can't tyre save, of course, like they can on their wheel, it's not possible to do a 1-stop here. It's just not, mediums are going to be lasting 8-9 laps with this level of fuel. Hards 13, 14 at best. It's a guaranteed 2-stop here. So I think those that have started mediums will be doing medium hard medium or medium hard hard, depending on how they feel. And then the ones on hards will probably do hard medium medium.
Yeah, I mean, 2 stops is going to be very interesting. I mean, it's not like other circuits where the pit lane isn't long. It's a pretty short pit lane, all things considered, here at Austria. And
it's about 18 seconds, I think.
There you go. In some circuits, I believe you can get up to about 30 seconds around Silverstone, something like that. So lots of time, and not much time in the way of this Austrian circuit. The final cars are pulling up to the grid then. Stuart Towers will be the last one alongside Harry Jennings, and I think in fact he's decided to speed to actually get ahead of Harry Jennings and be the penultimate driver up to the line. But now the drivers are ready. The green flag is being waved by the marshal on the side, and we're ready to get the action underway here in Austria. The lights are on, the drivers are ready, and the action's underway. We had a long wait, but we are underway. Dan Riley pulls across into the first corner. He doesn't want to challenge Andrea Chenkovan too much, and it's side by side. Kyle, Stuart Woodard and Bertwelly. Bertwelly getting an insane launch out of the corner, slingshotting himself into the battle for that third place and into the middle of Stephen Snell and Paul Garung. It's going to be Snell who holds that third place, but Bertwelly up to fourth and actually does tap the back of Snell, as there's already a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings for Paul Garung. 3 corners and 3 warnings for the Aston Martin, so not the greatest start for him, especially as he's dropped a position, but Andrea Chenkvan is going to lead, and Stephen Snell already out of the DRS to Dan Riley.
Yeah, Bertwelly capitalising on a little bit of contact into turn 1 between Paul Garung and Stephen Snell. It just looked like Paul Garung got a little bit beached on that curb, which is where I probably think he got the two warnings. Or what has happened is Paul Garung has got that glitch with this game where you would just immediately get a 3-second penalty. That is something which has been quite a big issue so far in F1 25. You know, I've seen multiple people get penalties because of it. So it's one of those two. I'm not 100% sure which, but if I had to place my finger on it, it would most likely be he's got the glitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal as, well, Jack Weaver did disconnect from the session. He's back in, and he's back in 5.3 seconds off of Harry Jennings in 11th place. And that is certainly not an ideal start to his race or to his evening for Jack Weaver, as that is wide for Bertwelly, and Paul Garung takes the opportunity to filter through and move up into 4th place and try and remain in the DRS of Stephen Snell, which has managed to work, and so he's not going to actually miss out too badly. Dan Riley 1.1 already off of Andrew Chenkvan, keeping pace despite being on the hard compound tyres, so maybe there's not too much of a difference, but the way they raced in the sprint race, there was very much an offset between the two. But well, Dan Riley 1.6 ahead of Stephen Snell, and well, that's a great start for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in terms of tyres, you know, the crossover is going to become a lot more visible, a lot quicker, potentially. You know, Stephen and Andrea Chenkvan had a very, very fast recovery in the sprint race, but you know, that was also because they were out of position. They, of course, would not ordinarily be starting P7, P8. They'd always be starting sort of P1, P2, P3, roughly where they are now. So they were fighting through some slower cars compared to them. But I think in terms of tyre wear, Dan Riley needs to stay probably in sort of a 2.5 to 3 second window of Andrea Chenkvan, to make it so he will catch Andrea Chenkvan by the time he decides to come into the pits for his first pit stop.
Yeah, it's well, it's all going to be about strategy, I think, this evening, and Dan Riley at the moment is going to be overcutting Andrea Chenkvan, and well, he'll be undercut by the Ferrari. He'll also be undercut by the Aston Martin, his Mercedes teammate, and the V-Cub as well. So, well, he's got a little work to do, and he's got a lot of pace to have, I think, in this session, as well, they head through the Syrian countryside for what will be the 4th lap of 36, and we are 1/10 through this race, and we have our 2nd time penalty of the evening, 3 seconds going to Connor Stuart Woodard for a well, for exceeding track limits, and he's 1.6 in behind the driver in front of him, Lucas Erosini, and he's got pressure from behind from Stuart Towers. Is the Williams going to be able to get through? Yeah, well, that was barely a question, I think, and Towers is through on Connor Stuart Woodard with no real problems at all. And now we have, well, we have the Williams up in 8th place, so a decent haul of points, I think, so far in terms of the way the Williams' season has gone. It's been very, very mixed for him, where it just feels like at some circuits he has ridiculous pace, at some circuits he's absolutely nowhere, and unfortunately Austria feels like a circuit where, because last time out he was challenging very, very high up the field, Austria feels like a circuit where it's just about having to unfortunately pick up the points and just being happy with what you've got, I think, is the main crux of things, and just picking up as many points as you can to help you in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, apologies there. I was having an issue with my mic, so I was just trying to fix that. But yeah, I think in terms of Williams and especially Stuart Towers, you know, Austria is a very different circuit to that of Imola, you know, especially on the car setup. You know, you're running much higher wings at Imola. Some people choose to go high wings at Austria, although I personally don't believe there's that much of an advantage in doing so. And I think they have similar natures in terms of the high-speed corners, but Imola, it's just I don't really know what the difference is, but there's certainly a difference between the two. I suppose it's the rhythm is the best way I can put it. There's a very different rhythm between Austria and Imola, and some people thrive at Austria and then suck at Imola, or thrive at Imola and suck at Austria. You never find someone really who's amazing at both, I personally find.
No, it's they're two very different circuits. I think Imola requires focus a lot of the time, and it requires adaptability, whereas Austria is more about doing the same thing over and over and over again, because of course the corners that you have around at the circuit, and that is exactly the problem, I think, with the differences in the circuits and the difficulties with adaptation. But I mean, at the moment, Stuart Towers is proving me wrong, because he's got pace. He's had the pace to break free from the cars behind and close in on Lucas Ericini and the cars in front. As we've got to move for the podium positions, that's going to be Paul Garung in through on Stephen Snell. And unfortunately, the switch to that battle, which is still almost raging on, has not seen us watch Stuart Towers get through on Lucas Ericini. But the pace of the Williams is decent so far in this race, not something that we saw in the qualifying or the sprint as well. And he wants to get back into the DRS as Stuart Woodard, and as it stands, he's certainly got the pace to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to what you're saying, about the differences between Imola and Austria after I started the point, I think that's another difference is, of course, you said Austria, you can have more time to relax. So I think sometimes that can be your downfall at Austria. Track limits are quite easy to fall foul to here. So I think sometimes if you just lose your concentration for a second, then you end up with track limit penalties. I think that's one of the differences. Imola is a circuit where you're always concentrated. This one, with long straights, you can relax for a minute, and sometimes that can be your downfall. Sorry.
Yeah, it certainly can. I think Brian Moore's just had a chill down the straight, and that has lost him a little bit of time. And I think he's gotten a little bit stressed by the fact that Connor has made his way through. So he had a little bit of a moment on the exit of turn number 3, and he is now down into 10th place and potentially out of DRS on Connor, which would not be ideal for him, considering the battle those two have. It spans seasons now, and it's always well-spirited, and so it's one of those battles that you do love to see, and that is exactly why you watch sim racing, or any racing in general. You like to see a well-spirited, good battle as well, and that's exactly what we have on our hands there. Our first pit stop of the day is going to come from the hands of Bert. He's going to pit from a set of the mediums to, I presume, the set of the hards or something like that, but that feels like an early time to come in. However, when we think back to the sprint race, and we had somebody pit because of the tyre wear in the sprint race, it's not surprising.
Yeah, and especially, higher fuel than the sprint race, so of course tyre wear is going to be a lot higher than it was in the sprint race, and we saw those medium runners by sort of lap 10, 11 were struggling like mad. So I think with the extra fuel on board, it's sort of about right for when you're coming in. All the medium runners, I think, are going to box between now and the end of lap 10. I don't think anyone's going to leave it longer than lap 10, and then the next window, if you're going on to hards, will probably be about lap 22, 23.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a long stretch then for on this set of hards to try and make it to the next stint, and that's what I think the drivers have gone for hards first, just to get out of the way. It makes sense to just try and get it out of the way, and I think that's exactly what they are doing with the medium stint. Is going to be, first off, it would just get you a good start, and that's what the likes of Stephen Snell, Paul Garung and Andrew Chenko are going to be hoping for. But I don't think it's got the desired effect, simply because I don't think the mediums are that much stronger than the hards.
No, I was literally about to say this. The mediums suck. They just suck in general on this game. They're so bad. The hards are, in my opinion, the only good race tyre in this game. The hards are the only of the dry compounds that feel good for a solid amount of time. Mediums just seem to fall off so quickly, especially at Austria. So I personally think medium hard or like hard medium actually could be stronger than a medium hard strategy, because I just feel like mediums are going to fall off too quickly.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like that, which is why I think the drivers on the hards were just so able to dominate in the sprint race. It's because they were on hard set of tyres, which were good in the first part of the stint, and then when the mediums fell off, they were so much better in the second half of the stint. Lucas Seracini, by the way, closing in on Stuart Towers and might be retaking this P6 as early as turn 1. No, he shapes up to do so, but he never actually applies the finishing move and moves past. But with the 2 DRS straights that he has coming up, I think it's a good opportunity for the V-Cub to get through, and it's the outside line. And well, who's going to be later on the brakes into the zone? It looks like it might be Lucas Seracini. Is Stuart Towers able to get the turn in that he wants, though? It looks like Seracini, though, has managed to get it, and he's up into that 6th place. In the meantime, Jack Weaver is through on Harry Jennings, even that's going to be for that 10th place.
Yeah, I think if I was Lucas Seracini there, Stuart Towers is actually going to get back through here potentially, and he is. He's going to brake significantly later. Lucas Seracini is going to fight it to the inside. I'd personally back out of this. Stuart Towers just gets the better line and takes the position. But if I was Lucas Seracini, what I personally would have done is I would have personally braked earlier than Stuart Towers in order to get that DRS down to the run to turn 4, just to solidify that you get that move 100% done and don't come under threat like he did.
Yeah, and well, Lucas Seracini is going to try and put Stuart Towers under pressure once again into the first corner. This is benefiting significantly the driver in behind, which is Connor Stewart Woodard, as well. Paul Garung is able to get back through on Stephen Snell, but that is going to be Lucas Seracini up through Towers, and he is up into that 6th place now. Stuart Towers is under pressure and under threat from Connor, who I think has just missed his braking zone, and so he is not going to be able to get through soon. But Paul Garung and Stephen Snell is going to be an interesting battle. 2 drivers that we know a little bit less about as they start to establish themselves in the Almost Pro Championship, but as it stands, 2 very, very quick drivers. Stephen Snell, we thought, would be an easy championship contender with Andrew Chenkovan. As he's settled in, he hasn't quite been as quick as he was in his initial couple of races, but he's still a very, very solid driver and still fighting for podiums.
Yeah, well, Stephen Snell is actually a driver I know very, very well. He has been my friend now for 3 years, and I've raced with him in so many different leagues, and I've raced with him so many times that I know his style, and I think this game suits him a little bit better than the last one. 23 was the one that suited him the most, but it just kind of feels like, you know, we've gone past his best couple of circuits, you know, sort of the Bahrains and things like that. I think as we come towards the latter half of the season, we'll come towards his other strong tracks. I'll just quickly try and find the calendar. Here we are. So ones that I know he's good at are Spa, Singapore. He absolutely loves Singapore, and Brazil and Qatar. So those are the ones I think he'll be very, very quick at. And I think towards the end, as we get towards the end of the season, sort of this lowly sort of slump he's having a little bit in the last few races will start to come to the end, and he will challenge for wins again and potentially make a late championship charge.
Yeah, it's well, I think it's going to be interesting to see towards the end of the season who is going to be the drivers that come out on top and the teams that come out on top. I think the team that comes out on top is looking pretty self-explanatory at the moment, just because Shackleton does appear to have the pace over Daniel Riley in terms of the quote-unquote second driver position, but Andrei Chenkovan is looking to establish himself as the quickest driver in the championship once again. Chenkovan and Dan Riley into the pit lane, and they make switches onto the hards as out of the final corner. That is going to be, that's going to be Burt, who gets through on Harry Jennings. And, well, Stephen Snell trying to find his way through as well. He does get through, and also the fight for that P3 is still on. So 2 very similar looking drivers, as I've just taken a screenshot. 2 very similar looking drivers, as it's the Williams and the V-Carb. And the Williams and the V-Carb in Burt, Welly and Harry Jennings, they're still fighting it out on the circuit. But Seracini on the outside line. Stuart Towers trying to defend the inside and trying to squeeze as much as he can to the outside line. And, well, that is Towers holding on to 3rd place.
Yeah, good little battle there between these two. They now have a couple of quicker cars coming up behind them. They've got Dan Riley a little bit behind them, and then they have Andrei Chenkovan, who's already into DRS on the significantly fresher tyres. So they want to be a little bit careful because if they're not, they might get in the way of this dogfight for the race leaders. Actually, as I say that, Luca Saraceni peels into the pits and goes for that undercut.
Yeah, Saraceni is in, and well, we will see how that one works out for him. As well, it's going to be a 10-second time penalty for Brian Moore for speeding in the pit lane, and Andrew Chenkvan gets ahead of Stuart Towers. And, well, he moves up into second place provisionally. First place, of course, Dan Riley has lost out somewhere. And I think he might have just... The only reason I can see Dan Riley losing this much time is if he was tentative into the pit lane.
What the hell?
What's happened?
I honestly have... What? I'm clipping. I think he's just, like, hit a bump or something. I'm not 100% sure. I was looking at my second monitor. I look over... And I just see a RB in the middle of the road missing a wheel. Hang on, I've clipped it. What happened?
He was in the pit lane, so maybe he's glitched.
Right, oh, what? Right, so he's hit that inside right-hand wall in the pit lane, and it's glitched him back onto the track. That's a really weird incident. What I've just seen. He's basically, as I said, hit the right hand of that wall, and just DNF from it. I'll show you the wall as Kyle comes into the pits, as does Stuart. If we can go on board with Kyle, I'll show you the wall that he's hit, because there's like a slight crest in the wall where it comes out. If we have a little look, if you go on board with Kyle now as he comes out of the pit lane, he hits this wall on his right hand side here, where it changes to that like little silver bit. That's where he hit, and it just took his wheel straight off.
Right, okay, well, I mean, it's F125 in a nutshell, I think. As, well, we'll go back to the racing action. It's allowed the opportunity for the majority of drivers who didn't go into the pit lane to do so. And, well, Stephen Snell's on the softs. Don't understand that one, but, yeah. Luca Saraceni is out of this session in interesting style, and we'll see if we can get a POV, or at least an opinion, on that one. But, yeah, I mean...
The clip is now uploading, so hopefully I'll be able to give you the clip in just a second.
Wonderful. I'll try and transfer that one across when I can. But we've got a safety car here on the Austrian circuit. Not something we see very often, but we've got a safety car out in the Almost Pro Championship. And this is uncharted territory for a lot of the drivers because we don't race with safety cars very often. We don't need safety cars very often with the level of the drivers that we have. And at the moment, we have Andrew Chenkvan leading the way, Dan Riley in P2, so regular positions. Kyle Stuart Woodard in third on brand new mediums. And he'll be trying to hold on to those as much as he can throughout this qualifying session, or throughout this safety car period even. And then fourth place for Paul Gurung, fifth for Stuart Towers. I don't know why Stephen Snell's on softs. I really cannot understand why Stephen Snell's on softs.
The only thing... Did he just go on... He just went on to hards. The only thing I can think is that he doesn't... He's gone the balance... As actually, someone's just got damaged, sorry. I think Jack Weaver... Yeah, Jack Weaver's just hit the back of Connor Stuart Woodard. I was on board with Stephen, and I just see a piece of end plate come flying off, and Jack Weaver has actually hit the back of Connor. But as I was saying, all I can think is that he went the balanced tyre option and feels he'll lose too much time if he stays on those hards. So he's gone to softs, and then he's going to switch back to those hards in a few laps' time. As what on earth? Stevens just hit the back of Jack Weaver as well. Was there damage? I need to... what's going on? It doesn't look like he's got damage, but he's just gone straight into the back of Jack Weaver.
Lapses of concentration here at Austria, I think, under the safety car. And that is what the safety car can breed, as there is an end plate off for Jack Weaver. Is there anything wrong for Stephen Snell? It doesn't appear so. And so I think he gets away with it. No penalty as well for either of them, I don't think, which is... again, very, very lucky indeed. There's no penalty for the incidents. Of course, they both have penalties for track limits. So that's very, very interesting. These softs are going to last about 2 or 3 laps after the safety car. So he is banking on, I don't know, something special happening. But yes, Stephen Snell, it's going to be a very interesting one to see what the Mercedes is going to do. And if this works out, I don't know what I'll do. Into the pits then it comes at Jack Weaver to try and fix that front wing. I'd say he's lucky at this point not to get a 10-second penalty.
Yeah, definitely. But I have a little bit of information from Luca Saraceni. He's just sent me a DM, and he said it was my rear tyres. I didn't even touch the brake, and they just locked up. I tried to correct it, but it wasn't enough, apparently. So what's happened there is he's just turned in probably to the end of the pit lane a little bit too hard. His rears have locked because Luca is now trying less assists than previously, and he's just hit the wall. So unfortunate there, and hopefully I can get the clip to you relatively soon. I'm just checking, it's on 55% uploaded, so it will be with you soon.
Well, we will hopefully get the opportunity to show you exactly what that is. That's certainly interesting, as the safety car is going to come in this lap, and we're going to get back to green flag racing after a couple of weird laps, I think it's fair to say, under safety car conditions. We're going to tick over halfway through the race as well, and well, we'll see what happens across the second part of this season, and what's going to be Andrea Chenkovan, who will lead us away, and it'll be Dan Riley in second place. Third for Kyle Stewart-Woodard, and well, he is on the freshest set of tyres, but he's also on the mediums, so he needs them to go well now, and he needs them to work now. Stephen Snell is going to need those softs to fire up instantly if he wants anything at all out of this race, as he needs to also get past Connor Stewart-Woodard and Stuart Towers, which will be not as easy as you would expect at Chenkovan. Then green flag racing is pretty simply brought back underway, and the Ferrari is going to lead. Didn't try any funny business, as that's going to be Harry Jennings out of the session. Chenkovan didn't try any funny business, he just simply got on with it, and it seems to have worked out. 8 tenths already eked out to Dan Riley.
Yeah, he's actually got a fantastic restart there, as Jack Weaver's got a penalty for ignoring yellow flags. So what's happened there is there's been yellow flags, and he's passed the AI, which, if he's coming into the pits again, but if he wasn't, he'd be able to get that removed. So that is really unfortunate for Jack Weaver there. But Andrea Chenkovan kept it nice and simple, as you said, and actually simple was best there, because he caught Dan Riley a little bit by surprise, it seemed. He just didn't get close enough before Andrea Chenkovan went.
No, he didn't, and well, that was, I mean, it's, I think potentially as well, he might have gotten past Brian Moore or something like that under safety car, because I did see the two kicks out was switching under the conditions, and I think when Chenkovan crossed the line, they had switched and hadn't switched back. So I think there's a couple of discrepancies with what had happened on the safety car procedure. Of course, you're not even allowed to pull alongside anymore, let alone ahead, as well. That's going to be into the pit lane for Harry Jennings. Is he back in the session, or is that going to be his AI pitting? I'm not sure, but I would be surprised if his AI pitted on lap 19 with just 4-lap-old medium compound tyres, as that is very wide from Connor, and he drops 2 positions. Stephen Snell and Burt are going to gain off of it, but that was a lapse in concentration for a new driver. This time it's Connor, and well, he falls off at turn 3. He's really struggled with the braking zone at turn number 3 here today, which is weird because it's the only real braking zone on the lap.
Yeah, it is, but it's a difficult braking zone because obviously it's uphill, and also it's a really awkward braking zone in and of itself. You know, sometimes you'll brake the same place and the car just won't respond to you. It's a really weird braking zone, and especially if you hit that outside curb coming into turn 3, sometimes that can hinder your braking quite a lot.
Yeah, it's but well, it gets a 3-second time penalty for track limit warnings once again, and well, we've been not short of those at all in this session, as Dan Riley makes a mistake. Kyle goes through, and it looks like Paul Garung might be trying to do the same thing. In fact, it might have actually been Stephen Snell, so that's my mistake. But Kyle does make it up to P2 nonetheless, and well, Stephen Snell is going to be squeezed. Through goes Jack Weaver on the inside line, giving a little bit of a bump to Snell on the way through, and they remain side by side. Those softs are going to be absolutely cooked at this point in the stint. So Jack Weaver feels as though it's not even worth Snell racing it, but he does nonetheless, and Weaver makes his way through. But yeah, that is going to be Dan Riley dropping down behind Carl Stewart-Woodard as well, and that's an interesting one, as Dan Riley seemingly on the faster tyre at this point in the stint, but Stewart-Woodard making his way past.
Yeah, I think maybe just there's a couple of laps tire offset for Kyle. You know, Dan Riley had 2 racing laps on those hard tires before the safety car, whereas Kyle was able to come straight into the pit. So it's probably about a 6, 7, 8% tire offset that he's got. So that will help him a little bit towards the end of the stint.
Yes, it will. At this point in the stint, it's all about saving and helping yourself at the end, as Stuart Towers has been. There's a huge send from Burt Welly on him, and it's worked. So Burt Welly up to 6th place. He's going to have that DRS off of Jack Weaver, but Stuart Towers, with the exit, because of the huge send Burt Welly got, is allowing himself to get back through, and he does. As Towers up into 6th place now, and holding it ahead of the V car, but it was a huge send, and one that didn't pay off. That's a 3-second time penalty, by the way, adding to the Williams' woes of Towers' teammate, Harry Jennings, who is going to finish outside of the points, I think, unless there's any more DNFs, and I'm not trying to summon anything, but it feels like I'm trying to summon something, as, well, we're going to head on to 22 of 36. This race has gone by in a flash, and Burt Welly is going to be in behind Stuart Towers, and, well, they're both on similar age medium compound tyres, so they're both going to be thinking about the pit stops, and I think they're going to have to happen some point soon.
Yeah, definitely. And also, Luca is going to be giving me his point of view for what happened to him. I've just sent over from my point of view, but it'll be interesting to see what happened with Luca. We'll get more information as the camera sort of cuts at the wrong time on my point of view.
Yeah, just trying to get that clip in, as this is ferocious battling for this P5. It's going to be Stuart Towers under pressure from Burt Welly, and Burt down the inside of turn number 4. Connor Stewart Woodard with intrigue watching on behind, and Burt squeezing Stewart to the outside. There's been a lot of squeezing between these two, and Stewart comes out ahead. Little bit of a tap from behind from Burt Welly, as I think Stewart went a little bit slower into the corner, apprehensive about his entry, and well, he does come out on the exit successfully. So the Williams up into 6th place, Burt Welly 7th, and Connor still 8th. But this one is going to wage on, I think, for at least a few more laps.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic working for a second. Yeah, definitely. These two been absolutely going for it. They were going for it towards the start of the race, and the safety car just sort of brought these two back together. Of course, Burt Welly was the earliest of the pit stops in this race, so he did actually get an undercut on Stuart Towers eventually. But now that the safety car has come out, they're back together and can't let go of each other. As Burt actually gets a penalty, Stuart has to go off track to avoid a little bit of contact. I think he might have had a big snap as well. As now on board with Connor, there's going to be a huge side-by-side between Burt and Stuart. Down the inside goes Burt, and I think Stuart's just going to hang it around the outside. He's going to get the better traction, and Burt is going to be forced to back out.
Yeah, he is. Connor having a look there on the inside of Burt, but not making the move just yet. We will have a look once this battle is over at what happened to Lucas Aracini, Burt's teammate, earlier on in this race. Of course, we know what's happening to Stuart Towers' teammate. Some woes going on in this one, and we know what's happening to Connor's teammate as well. The opposite, as he looks in contention for a podium, and what a podium it would be. What a story for the McLaren driver in this season. He's had struggles ever since F125 came out, and ever since he tried to adjust, and he has failed so far. But today might be the turning point for Kyle Stewart Woodard, as well, he was hoping to match with Dan Riley, but instead he has gone backwards, and he's actually fighting with his brother and with Brian a lot of the races, but he might have the opportunity to fight forward here today, as well, he had a chance to fight with Stuart Towers a couple of times before the end of last season, and Stuart is still fighting with Burt here today. Can't quite pick Burt Welly. He seems incredibly quick at some times, but other times it feels like he's a little bit more mid-pack. But yeah, if we have a look at some of the pre-race interviews, Burt Welly says he felt really good about the last race. Of course he did, because he finished 2nd place, so that makes more sense. And then he had the chance to practice before the race this time, and well, he was P2 last time, P6 this time, so maybe needs a bit more practice. But back onto that Kyle Stewart Woodard point. He was the second one to put in a driver update just to tell us how he's feeling pre-race, and well, he said, talking about the previous race, he doesn't know why he had so many penalties, because of course, don't forget, he ended up with, I think it was 21 seconds worth of penalties. So that
24,
24,
I think, in the end.
So maybe one more than I remember him having, but that was certainly not ideal as a jig to the outside sees Stuart Towers back through on Bert Welly. But he says, how is he feeling about this race around Austria? Just hoping for a steady, clean race and finally start getting some points on the board. And at the moment, if he gets a third place on the board, he's going to be ecstatic with the way that this one's gone, as Bert Welly sends it massively on the inside of turn number 4. And Stuart Towers, with the switchback, is going to get back through on the V-Cub, but this battle wages on. And, well, Connor's got prime position to watch at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think watching might be the smart idea at the moment, as Bert has just had a huge lag spike, and it's just lagged from about 2 temps back to about 7. So, not too sure what happened there, but in terms of Connor, it might be wise to let these two battle out and capitalise on maybe a turn 3 side by side, get the better traction, and then you can pass them heading up to turn 4. I think sitting behind and playing the patient game, as I said at the start of this race, could be a smart idea here for him.
Yeah, it could certainly be 26 of 36, and these drivers fighting it out for this 6th place. Stuart Towers, by the way, doesn't have a penalty, which could be crucial in the battle. Bert Welly and Connor Stewart would have both do, and Connor's just added to his total. He's up to now 9 seconds worth of penalty. We will have one more pit stop, I think, in this race for the majority of these drivers. Maybe not Stephen Snell, and well, Brian is in the pit lane now, and I think he's going to aim for that to be his last pit stop of this race. But I think everybody else will be jumping into the pit lane, as that's the 3-second time penalty added to Jack Weaver's time. So the Kicksauber is going to have a little bit of a struggle in this race now to keep it on the straight and narrow, and he moves up to 16 seconds. He's trying actually to match Kyle's record, but well, speaking of Kyle, he is into the pit lane for the final time in this race, and what a crucial time it's going to have to be for Kyle. What is he going to switch on to? It's going to be a set of the mediums. Jack Weaver in as well, and will probably serve 10 of those 16 seconds worth of penalties. Kyle then out of the pit lane. He will come out behind Stephen Snell in 7th place. But he's going to be right in behind the Mercedes and trying to pressure from minute 1 because he's on fresher tyres and arguably better tyres. We have now got a little bit of a lull in the action of the race, so we are going to give you the opportunity to have a look at. No, we're not, because for some reason. But when it does work, we're going to give you the opportunity to have a look at what happened to Luca Seracini. Is it going to be now? Yes, it is. And you can see. Well, down he goes into the pits. He's going to stop, come out of the pits. Pretty normal. Luca Seracini, there we go. He's in behind Connor. And then as soon as they get back going again, he turns the corner. And what it looks like he just taps it with his front right. And he ends up in the middle of the straight somehow. So F125 at its finest. Stuart Tower picks up a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and that's not ideal. Burton as well as Dan Riley, and with just 8 laps to go now, this is the crucial point in this race. Dan Riley is going to be out ahead of Stephen Snell, who's ahead of Kyle Stewart Woodard still, so the battle for P3 is well and truly on.
Yeah, 100%, and I think this is actually quite a crucial time in the race. You know, Stephen needs to hold Kyle as best as he can. I don't think he's going to be able to catch Dan Riley now. Of course, Dan Riley has the 7-lap fresher mediums, but Kyle can potentially still get a podium here, but he needs to get past Stephen, and Stephen will be trying to hold him, as I said, because although Stephen has that 3-second penalty, all it takes is for Kyle to get a penalty, and it's race back on. It's worth, especially around Austria, not giving up until it's over, because it's so easy to get penalties here. It's
so very easy to pick up penalties, and well, that's exactly what these drivers have shown so far. Only 3 without 4 if you count Luca, but he had his penalties scrubbed off because he has not finished this race. Kyle now looking on the inside line of Stephen Snell, but this is a crucial point in this race, and I think Daniel Riley has eked out that gap enough so that Kyle won't be pressuring him late on, but the McLaren will still want the best possible opportunity. Maybe the 2 Mercedes are working together here as Kyle sends it to the inside line, but just backs out at the last moment and will set himself up for turn number 4. There is not cautions, by the way, on the circuit. I've only just noticed that, but that is a long-lasting visual glitch. Now the outside line for Kyle, but no, he backs out earlier this one. And I think he's just trying to force a mistake out of Stephen Snell instead, as Stuart Towers is into the pit lane for the final time, and he's going to be lapped by Andriy Chenkvan, who still, I think, is going to need to come into the pits. If he doesn't, though, then he's going to be, these tyres are going to be screaming out in pain, as are Pulga Rungs. And I think the attempt for both of them is to take it as far as they possibly can into this race, which is a gamble, but it may well pay off. Did see a league race the other day where somebody came across the line with left front and left rear tyres on 100%, and they didn't explode. So they could be going to the end, but they're going to have to ride their luck.
I personally, in Andrei Chenkovan's situation, wouldn't risk it. He's got 22 seconds back to Dan Riley, which is definitely enough to come out in the race lead. I believe it's about 21 pit seconds to be safe. So he'd definitely come out in the race lead still. And he'd come out on the freshest tyres on the grid. If he's got a set of soft, then potentially it might be worth it in a lap or so. Now, that's just what I think. But, you know, it could go on mediums if he really doesn't fancy softs, or he doesn't have another set. Probably the safer bet.
Yes, we'll have a look towards the end of this. 6 laps to go, and I think Chenkovan can afford one more pit stop. I don't think, though, that Paul Garung can, and we will see what is going to happen towards the end of this race with just the 6 laps to go then. And Chenkovan has actually lapped Stuart Towers, who's on a set of the softs, so everyone will be watching those soft tyres with interest and seeing how long they last, because surely they're not going to last as long as they're hoping for. We have a fight for P number 4 that is on, but we also have a fight for P7 that's on Burt Welly and Jack Weaver. That one could switch it down the main straight, and we're going to have a look back to it as Carl Stewart gets a poor exit out of the first corner and does drop off a little bit from Snell. It's going to be Jack Weaver, who also isn't going to make a move into the first corner either, but he's going to set himself up just that little bit better for the exit of the corner. Is he able to get through? No, I don't think he will be. He's going to try and pull alongside, but that actually means he's out of the slipstream, and so that's going to negatively affect him. He's still going to lunge it anyway, and Burt Welly allows him the space. Jack Weaver with the exit, and that is exactly the overtake that you want to get to turn number 4. Burt Welly's going to try and fight back, but without the DRS and without anything, he's going to have to do it on raw speed, and the V-Carb does pull alongside with the raw speed, but eventually it'll be the Kick Sauber who finds his way ahead.
Yeah, and that move was built on Jack Weaver just having fresher tyres, you know. 6-lap mediums versus 10-lap hards. There is still a huge difference between those tyres, and because Burt Welly has laps on his tyres over Jack Weaver, the crossover point between those two is going to be a lot further away than it ordinarily would be, just because he has a few extra percent on his tyres than he ordinarily would. So I think Jack Weaver, if he can defend from DRS and have a full middle sector in front of Burt Welly, then he's in a good position to start breaking away from DRS.
Yeah, it will be a good position if he is able to get it off. And, well, at the moment, Burt Welly is going to fight back. Inside line then beckons. And does he pull through? No, he doesn't. But with the DRS, surely this is going to be a simple move for Burt Welly. But no, Jack Weaver gets such a good exit out of the corner that Welly is going to only get up to him into the braking zone of turn number 4. And he just gets squeezed once again. Jack Weaver taking the racing line. And Burt Welly smartly deciding that that is not his move to make, and pulls out of it at the very last second. But yeah, it's going to be the move made, and well, the defensive move made even for Jack Weaver, and that's actually broken Burt's confidence and broken Burt's slipstream just that little bit more, as well, now he is very much dropped off, and he's around that 1 second mark behind. Carl Stewart in the meantime hasn't been able to get the inroads on Stephen Snell, so I think it's going to be heartbreaking for the McLaren. I don't think he's going to be able to get back ahead of the Mercedes.
He doesn't necessarily need to get back in front of Stephen. Stephen has a 3-second time penalty, and Kyle does not. So all he needs to do is stay within 3 seconds, and he will have that 4th place, which I believe, quote me if I'm wrong, is his best performance of the season, best result? Or did he have a 3rd place? I can't actually remember. I think it's his best, though. Yes.
I don't think he's had a podium. I would gander a guess that he hasn't, and I will just double check now, but I'm pretty sure that this will be by far his best finish of the season, and he'll be happy with it regardless, even though it will feel a little bit like a missed opportunity. He has only got 20 points so far across the 4.5 races with the sprint race, or 4 1/3, and it will become 5, but he will add to his points tally. He will add a third onto his points tally. So that'll be very, very good. And he is actually going to go for the move here on the inside of Stephen Snell. There's contact between the two, and Kyle is going to let Stephen go. Stephen did come across, but by that time Kyle was already trying to pull alongside, and I think a little bit of miscommunication between the drivers, and they've allowed for the opportunity for Stephen Snell to get back through and the fight to continue.
Yeah, I think Kyle letting Stephen back through was not only obviously a racing decision, but also a decision for whether it went to the stewards or not. I think if he'd have not let Stephen back through, then Stephen could have taken it to the stewards. But since he gave the position back, same as in real racing, it'd just be flagged as no further action because there's no lasting advantage.
Just having a look through at the results, and I really cannot see Kyle Stewart Woodard anywhere higher than around like 8th place or something like that. He got 5th place in the sprint here today. He got 8th place last week, 10th the week before. He got 5th place in Japan, and then in the first race of the season, he got 10th. So this would be where it will be matching his best race finish in terms of on track, off track. It would be his best race of the season because he's going to get past Stephen Snell, and it's all about keeping penalty free at this point in the race. So just have a quick check to see how many warnings he's on, and is it close? He got one on lap 1, and he got one on lap 31. So he is close to picking a penalty up and matching Stephen Snell on 3 seconds worth of penalties. So I think he's going to want to get through on circuit on the Mercedes as we head on to what it will be the penultimate lap of the race. Andrea Chenkovan leading the way as he has been. Well, he's actually onto the final lap of the race. So Chenkovan and Paul Garung have managed their tyres so incredibly well throughout the course of this race. Dan Riley came into the pits, went on a different strategy to the top two, but the same strategy as the majority.
Stephen's in.
Stephen has come into the pit lane, and you can see why, because that front right has punctured, I think. And that is an absolutely incredible time for Stephen Snell to come into the pits. That is, he's timed it impeccably. However, that's in on the last lap of the race. So while he does survive, it's going to be a very, very, very difficult result to swallow. That does promote Kyle to P4, and it demotes Stephen Snell all the way down to what is currently 8th place as he's out of the pit lane. But Andrea Chenkovan, he has worried about his tyres all day, but he hasn't had to worry too much because of the gap he's held over Dan Riley. And he is cruising to the end of this race, trying not to use any of his tyres. But he's managed them perfectly. He's made the one-stop work, and he's taken a double salvo here in Austria. An unbelievable drive from Andrea Chenkovan, and he wins once again as Dan Riley will come home for a very well-earned P2, and Paul Garung in 3rd place. He's managed those tyres right to the end as well. Kyle Stewart Woodard will pick up his best result of the season in 4th place, and 5th for Connor Stewart Woodard as well. So a good day for the two McLarens and the two brothers as well. However, the two Williamses have finished 10th and 11th a lap down, and so they will have a lot of thinking to do before we head to next week's race. Jack Weaver is going to come home in 6th, and Burt Welly on track at least is 7th, but it's going to be Stephen Snell up to that 7th place, and Burt demoted to 8 after penalties. Stephen Snell, of course, missing out on 4th place on the final lap of the race. Jedi then, Brian Moore, will finish in 9th place and will be the final finisher here around Austria this evening. And, we've had a very, very intriguing race. Said it at the said it at the top of the race, and said it once again. It's all about strategy, and today it was somehow nailed by those two drivers on that podium, Andrea Chenkovan and Paul Garung. But Dan Riley went for the more conventional strategy, and his pure pace saw him onto the podium. Kyle Stewart Woodard's pure pace unfortunately saw him off of that podium, and that is not what he would have wanted to see, but it's still a good weekend from his perspective. It's going to be Chenkovan who wins this one out. Second for Dan Riley, and third place for Paul Garung. Then the two Barbudians, the two brothers, the two McLarens, the two Stuart Woodards, Kyle and Connor, fourth and fifth, with Jack Weaver sixth place. Stephen Snell in seventh, Burt Welly in eighth, and Brian Moore and Harry Jennings rounding out the top 10, with Stuart Towers in 11th and Luca Seracini are only DNF. But an intriguing race. Not necessarily the most exciting in terms of the on-track action, but an intriguing race has just ended after 36 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix.
Yeah, as you said, overall, an intriguing race. There were some very strange things that happened. Of course, Luca Seracini's DNF sticking out, and then obviously Stephen getting that puncture on the last lap. I said tyre wear here was very, very high, especially if you're on controller, which Stephen is. So unfortunate, but I suppose that's the risk you take.
It certainly is. We're going to get the interviews underway pretty much straight away this evening, I think, and we're going to start with Brian Moore as per usual. So, well, we brought you straight in, Brian. We've not allowed you the opportunity to continue your conversation with Bert and Jack, but you get an opportunity to talk to me and Owen. So, if you want to just talk us through that race.
That was a shambles. That's all I can say. That was not a good race at all for me. Give me a second. I'm just kidding. So yeah, that was the damage on the safety car, which I got on the wing, really hurt the race. I feel other than that, I could have been up P8, maybe P7, but it was not a good race at all today. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those races, I think, where it's just all about damage limitation, but you still picked up 2 points. Did you feel like going into the race you were going to be able to come home in 9th place, or were you hoping for any higher? Were you expecting any lower? Anything like that?
I was hoping for higher. I mean, the sprint race wasn't great, but I was hoping that in the main race I could have got P7 or P8, but P9, it's points, so I'll take the points.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And, well, Owen, have you got anything for Brian?
No, I have not.
Wonderful. Well, in that case, then we will let you go. And, well, actually, before we let you go, one more thing. And, well, I mean, Austria didn't really go your way. Are you more excited, though, for your home race in Silverstone?
If I'm able to race, then yes. I'm still not 100% sure if I'll be able to race Silverstone, but if I can, I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Hopefully. Thank you.
And now we are going to bring in... Who do we bring in? I reckon we are going to bring in... Well, we've got Connor in the interview room, so we'll wait a couple of minutes to see if he actually wants an interview or just a chat, but we'll get the chance to speak to Jack instead. And, well, hello, Jack, if you can hear us. Sorry for interrupting your conversation, but do you want to just talk us through that race?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, yep.
Wonderful. Do you want to just talk us through that race?
It was one of the unluckiest races I think we've ever had. Obviously disconnected at the start, lost over 10 seconds. Caught back up, got really lucky with the safety car that came out. Went AI mode for a minute, for a split second. My AI driver decides to drive into the back of Krypton. I get wing damage. I had to pit again, back of the grid. Someone else disconnected in front of me at the safety car restart. Jedi overtook him and got away with it, so I went for it, and then I got a 10-second penalty. I was like, just nothing was on my side that whole race.
Yeah, unfortunate then. And well, I mean, is it one of those races where you're just sort of hoping it to end and can't wait for next week?
The annoying thing is, though, I think I actually had pace to be fighting up there with the others, but it was just really unlucky. I think I did really well to come back from 10 seconds behind to P6 in the end, but yeah, not not the greatest of races.
Yeah, fair enough. And well, mentioning next week, what is Silverstone like for you?
A bit miss and match. It's not my favourite track to drive, but it's all right. I can deal with it.
Well, that's fair enough. Then what sort of position are you hoping for?
I know I'm just hoping for a bit of luck on my side next week.
You're
That's
saving
all
up.
I
You're
want.
saving up for it. That's what it is.
Yeah, hopefully, all in one race.
Exactly. Owen, have you got
But
anything
yeah.
for Jack?
Yeah, just quickly. We saw other drivers, struggle with tires. Were you struggling with sort of tire temperatures or tire wear? Because that's something that can be an issue at Austria.
I would say it was quite high, but I wasn't really struggling with the grip. I think it got to a point where I got in the race and I was like, screw this, and just absolutely went for it. So I didn't really experience too much grip loss. Only in the final stages of the harder tyre, that was the only time.
That's fair enough. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Right, and then that is Jack Weaver, of course, making his comeback to 6th place, but well, we will get the opportunity now to speak to, because he's still in the interview room, well, we're going to get the rare opportunity to speak to Connor Sherwood, if he does want to join us in an interview. And well,
Hello.
you do want to join us for an interview. Wonderful, that is good. We get the rare opportunity to speak to you. How did that race go for you? I know it was a pretty good race for you and your brother.
Yeah, it worked out quite well for me. I mean, after the shocking sprint, I was like, right, something needs to change, because I think I went from, what is it, like fourth to the back, and then I had like 26 seconds of penalties. So I was like, right, time to lock in a bit more. So I just tried to drive a lot more sensible race, realistically. Keep it clean, don't get as many penalties. Still got 9 seconds, but it seemed to have done the trick. And then just stay out a lot of the battling. You know, I had a couple of people battling around me, primarily probably Stuart and Demon. Stayed behind them until sort of let them sort of tussle their own way out of the lead, and kind of all worked out in the end.
That's fair enough. I mean, it looked like a very good race from your perspective. I mean, when that safety car came out, what was the feeling and the reaction like?
Do you know, I was a bit indifferent about it, just because of the timing. I was like, am I actually going to benefit from just coming out of the pits as the safety car got called out? Luckily enough, I think I did make up a couple of places, so it ended up being a bit of a win for me. But I did end up using all my batteries to get them places, and then I kind of think when it restarted, I probably wasn't in the best position. But then I think, yeah, like I said, it kind of played out. I played the long game, and it seems to have worked out this time.
Fair enough. Silverstone, how does that feel for you?
I'm going to take this 5th place finish in Austria and celebrate it, and then see how quickly I can get to the back of the grid in Silverstone, because I hate the track.
Well, that seemed like what you were trying to do in the sprint race. But, yeah.
Basically.
But yeah, I mean, it was a good performance in the main race itself for you. Owen, have you got anything for Connor?
Yeah, just quickly, you said things needed to change after the sprint. Obviously, you got those 2 10-second penalties. Sort of, what was the issue in the sprint, and what did you change?
I'll be completely honest. I had only practiced the track in time trial, so I was very used to putting in top performance 1 lap pace. I mean, I didn't quite show that in quali, but that was sort of all I'd practiced for the race in this game. So I was like, when it came to trying to run on high fuel, trying to pick my braking points, I just didn't know where they were, and I think I ran deep in T3 about 3 times in the sprint. So going into it, I was like, right, I'm just going to brake a touch earlier and see if that actually just ends up benefiting me in the long run. Then I realized my race pace was a lot better just braking earlier. So that was pretty much all I did. I try not to push every corner like it was a qualifying lap, basically, and try and be like, well, if I'm going to make up time, I'm going to do it by being smooth rather than fast.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between race pace and qualifying pace, I think. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us today, and we'll see you next week.
All right, I appreciate it, guys.
Oh, good. And then, right, we're trying to remember who we've spoken to. We haven't spoken to Bert yet, have we?
No, we've not.
No, we haven't. So we will bring him in then, and we'll get the chance to speak to Bert on how that race went. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. No, yes, I can.
Wonderful. Well, do you want to just talk us? Well, I said I've used the plural as well. So, but do you want to just talk us through that race?
I had a decent quality, got P5, and then I thought the mediums were gonna stick, man. But on like lap like 7 or like lap 8, I had no grips. I had to pit early. That low key messed me up because like 6 laps later, the safety car came in and they pitted hards. So yeah, and I thought it was gonna be a good idea to pit again, so I went on the mediums. But then after I pitted, I realized I didn't have any new tires, so I was just screwed after that. And overall, I had zero pace.
Yeah, I mean it was an unfortunate weekend, especially after turning into a full-time driver. How are you? What's the aim for the rest of the season? Of course, but in becoming a full-time driver.
Uh, practice more for the upcoming races. Uh, and just trying to improve my race pace, to be honest, because my quality pace is decent in some tracks, but I can definitely improve my race pace overall.
That's fair enough. Owen, have you got anything for Bert?
No, not this time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Right, and then we will speak to Daniel Riley, the man who, I mean, went on the normal strategy, but it looked like it worked out well for him more than anybody else. Dan, if you can hear us, can you talk us through your race?
Yeah, first off, that was absolutely mega. Let's go to qualifying. Actually, no, before that, in the sprint, actually. We started P6, I think. I was meant to start P8, but ended up starting P6, which was good. 2 easy positions. Then I was really surprised with the pace I had. I was absolutely just going through everyone. Even Kyle said he was really surprised when he saw me behind. I was absolutely rapid. A bit unfortunate I didn't get the win in the sprint, but I'm not really too fussed about it. But because Andrea was just way too fast, I tried to save up energy and try and overtake him, but he was just way too fast. I couldn't really do anything about it. So yeah, that's a sprint. P2, that's actually my best result this season. And then we get into qualifying. Again, really surprised with how fast I was. I was expecting to be fast in Austria, but I wasn't expecting to be exactly 1/10 away from Chenkovan. So yeah, very surprised with qualifying, but we take it, P2 in qualifying. And then to free Peter, we did P2 in the race. I think we got a good launch off. Then I tried to extend, which was good, and I was just eking that gap out all the way through, and just concentrated on my race, not try and get track limits. Don't think I actually got a single warning, which was pretty good. But yeah, just focusing on what I was doing in that race. Didn't really have too many battles, which was good. But yeah, respectable P2. I can't really complain. I think, yeah, one of my best weekends in the APC overall.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And would it be added to your list as your second favourite circuit in that case?
I mean, it probably has to. I mean, Bahrain and Abu Dhabi are the 2 circuits that I'm really strong at. But maybe we'll have to add in Austria as a third, because was not really expecting the pace today again. But yeah, it was actually a really good circuit. I actually really do enjoy this circuit. So yeah, definitely have to add it on to the favourite circuits.
Fair enough. And Silverstone next week, how does that one feel?
Yeah, trip down memory lane. Got my first podium in Silverstone, so hopefully we can get another podium there. But we'll have to wait and see. But I do love Silverstone. It's a home race for me. Yeah, again, first podium I got in APC was in Silverstone, so hopefully, yeah, again. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, Owen, have you got anything for Dan?
Yeah, just quickly for you. Obviously you're on wheel. How was tire wear? Controller on tire wear. Controller can be a little bit difficult So what was it like on wheel, and sort of do you feel you could have done the one stop if you tried?
I probably could have done the one stop. The only problem was I started on hards, and then I went literally a lap before the safety car came out. I went on another set of hards, so I couldn't really do a one stop because, well, I had to go on either softs or mediums. Otherwise, I would have been disqualified. So yeah, I mean, if I started on the mediums or if I pitted for mediums, then I reckon I could have worked it out. It probably was more optimal going on to doing a one stop. But yeah, it just didn't really work out because I went on too hard. So but yeah, it's something to look forward to, I guess. One stops.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming to speak to us today, and we'll see you in Silverstone next week.
Oh, that's all right. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the final man into the interview box. A bit more positive, I'd imagine, than the last couple of weeks. Carl, would you like to talk us through your race? We won't talk you through your race.
Be surprised. You'd be surprised. I know I should be happy with this. I had great pace today. I know I should be happy, but genuinely super frustrated of what Stephen did at the end there. Like, I don't understand the need to hold me up for 10 laps or however many laps it was when I was always going to come past you in penalties anyway, and called me to lose out on getting the podium. Like, I was in fresh mediums. I finished 3.8 seconds behind Paul. If I wasn't behind him, Stephen, for those laps, no doubt, I'd have got P3. So I know I should be happy with P4. But when the podium was on the cards and I got held up for no reason at all and no explanation, that's obviously really annoyed me today, if I'm honest. And I don't understand why he's done it. And he's, I'd see he's not jumped in for an interview. He's not gone into the driver chat. Like, he always doesn't want to talk about it. I just don't get it. I don't get what the need was. So yeah, like, it's good points, and I'll take it, and I'm not gonna, put too much of a downer on it. But the podium was easily there today. I had the pace for it. I had the pace to get Paul. I don't know why he defended me. Stephen defended me so hard. They just didn't need to do it. So that's unfortunately sorry to bring a downer into the booth, but yeah, like, when you finally come to a race, you finally got the pace for the podium, and somebody holds you back for. And don't be wrong, like, he doesn't owe me anything. He's not my teammate. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't owe me that. But like, what did he achieve from causing me to not get a podium? Nothing. I had no penalties. I managed to stay clean today, so I did all the work. But so yeah, sorry to bring negative into the booth, but I think you can understand, when the podium's that close.
Yeah, we're used to bringing you into the interview room and you being negative, but this time it's potentially unjustified. But yeah, I mean, I'd still say it was a decent race overall. So I mean, is it a sign of things to come? Maybe is it a more positive? Could it be a more positive start of the second half of the season?
I mean, I like to hope so. I made some setting changes. I won't go into what they are, and then I also took a different setup direction as well. I tend to go with a way that I like to race, and setups that kind of, I think, suit me more. But I decided to try something a little bit different. And even in time trial, I was like, okay, I feel good. I mean, Owen knows, because I happily sent him the screenshot of me being faster than both of his times, because he's now obviously on PC as well. So yeah, potentially, like, if I keep kind of going with this new setup direction, if I kind of keep that going and it still continues to work for me, then yeah, it's very possible. But it could just be a really good track for me as well. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I'd like to think that, some higher positions should be coming up. I mean, like, I don't know if I'll be that close to the podium every race, but yeah, potential for some in the next over the next few races, especially in the second half of the season. There's some fun ones there.
And a good start to the season, or a good race at least for your team as a whole. Of course, fourth and fifth. So again, maybe a sign of things to come. Maybe a better season in the second half of it overall than in the first.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm privy to the championship order as it updates. I can see that we've jumped 3 positions now for following since the sprint, which is quite good. But to be fair, even the sprint, I forget we had the sprint as well. That I was a little bit like, I couldn't believe that. Like, I was
2 seconds out in the lead, and then Dan Riley was just so fast in the sprint, so fast. So yeah, he deserved to be ahead of me there. I thought I had a good chance of a podium there, but yeah, and then with Stuart as well. Actually, we were the same. We were matching pace. I was just staying behind him because I had the penalty, but I tried to go for it on the last lap because I thought if he gets a penalty, I don't want to be behind him. Didn't quite work out, but yeah. Well, it's good for the team. Connor, yeah, he managed to, from what I understand, I think Bert behind him held like a lot of people up, so Connor ended up being able to negate the penalty in the end. It didn't really affect him. So yeah, it worked out quite well today. Yeah, we both. And don't get me wrong. Obviously, we might be teammates, but obviously we want to beat each other as well. So I would have liked it to be a little bit further away. But you know what? If we're going to end up third potentially in the team championship, then we'll take that.
There you go. I forced you to put a positive spin on it. Owen, have you got your
No, not on this one, sadly.
Wonderful. Well, in that case, then we're going to end off, and that was two very, very different races in Austria. One which was pretty much action start to finish, and the next one, which was a fascinating strategic battle. But we'll see you next time in Silverstone. Until then, it is goodbye. Underway. Stamps' authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong. On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch!
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this.